Home movies. Uncovered my wife's darkest secret, the betrayal on film. An afternoon of nostalgia. It was an unusually quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind that I hadn't experienced in months. Lisa, my wife of 10 years, had taken our two kids to her parents' house for the weekend. It was a routine visit, one we did at least every couple of months, but this time I had opted to stay behind. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy the company of my in-laws. In fact, we got along quite well. But work had been wearing me down lately, and the idea of a weekend alone in a quiet house seemed like the perfect opportunity to reset. The kids would be back soon enough, bringing the usual joyful chaos, so I wanted to savor the stillness while I could. With nothing but time on my hands, I thought I'd tackle one of the projects that had been on my mind for ages: cleaning out the attic. It was something I'd been putting off for years. That space had become a catch-all for everything we didn't know what to do with. Old toys, clothes, boxes of papers, and memorabilia from earlier days that we couldn't bring ourselves to throw out. Climbing the creaky wooden stairs to the attic felt like stepping into a time capsule, a physical manifestation of our shared history. I pushed open the door to the attic, feeling the musty air hit me as I took in the scene. The room was dimly lit by a single window, streaked with dust that filtered the afternoon sunlight into soft, muted beams. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, the kind of dust that made it clear this space hadn't been disturbed in a long time. I grabbed a nearby cloth, intending to wipe down surfaces as I went, and started pulling down boxes. Each box was a window into the past, and as I rummaged through them, I felt waves of nostalgia crash over me. The first box was filled with childhood toys, stuffed animals and action figures from when the kids were younger, before they outgrew their fascination with them. I held up a worn-out teddy bear that had once belonged to our eldest, Sarah. She used to carry that bear everywhere she went: school, sleepovers, even on family trips. Seeing it now, tucked away and forgotten, made me realize how much time had passed. The innocence of childhood, something we take for granted as parents, was preserved in this dusty attic, hidden away as life rushed forward. The next few boxes were filled with old photo albums, scrapbooks, and cards. I found birthday cards Lisa and I had exchanged during the early years of our marriage, each one filled with love and promises for the future. There were anniversary cards, too, with sweet messages reminding us of how far we had come together. I couldn't help but smile at the memory of those early years, when we had nothing but each other and a dream of building a life together. It wasn't until I reached the far corner of the attic that I stumbled upon a box I hadn't expected to find. One filled with old VHS tapes. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized the tapes. Back before smartphones and cloud storage, Lisa and I used to film everything. We recorded our lives, our wedding, family vacations, the kids' first steps, even lazy weekends at home where nothing much happened. The tapes were like time capsules, capturing not just moments, but the way we were back then. Each tape had a label: wedding day, Christmas 2008, Sarah's first birthday. I couldn't resist. Digging through the dusty contents of the box, I found our old VHS player, still in working condition as far as I could tell. I brought it downstairs, plugged it in, and hooked it up to the TV. The house was so quiet that the sound of the machine whirring to life seemed almost too loud. I took one of the tapes, our first family vacation, and slipped it into the player. The screen flickered, and after a few seconds of static, the familiar grainy quality of the old home movies filled the screen. There we were, standing by the beach, Lisa laughing as I struggled to hold both kids in my arms while keeping my balance on the shifting sand. Sarah, just 3 at the time, giggled and clung to me as I splashed water on her feet. Little Michael toddled nearby, fascinated by the tiny waves rolling in. Lisa looked radiant in the sun, her hair blowing in the breeze, her smile bright and carefree. I felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering how perfect that day had felt. Those were simpler times, days filled with nothing but the joy of being together as a family. As the footage played on, I found myself getting lost in the memories. Tape after tape, I watched our lives unfold before my eyes. Our wedding, full of laughter and dancing, the birth of our children, and endless family gatherings where we celebrated holidays and birthdays with friends and relatives. I could see the progression of time in our faces, in the way we spoke, in the way the kids grew with each passing year. It was a beautiful reminder of everything we had been through, the ups and downs, the happy moments, and the challenging ones. Our life together felt like it had been a rich, beautiful tapestry. And then I came across a tape that wasn't labeled. It stood out immediately. Every other tape in the box had a clear label, names, dates, or events, scrawled in Lisa's neat handwriting. But this one was different. It was plain, unmarked, as if it didn't belong with the rest. Curious, I pulled it out and examined it. The fact that it wasn't labeled made me wonder what it could be. Was it an unfinished tape? An event we had forgotten to label? I hesitated for a moment, but then my curiosity got the better of me. I inserted the unmarked tape into the player and waited for the screen to flicker to life. The familiar static buzzed briefly, and then the image appeared. At first, it was nothing out of the ordinary. The footage was shaky, like whoever was filming didn't quite know what they were doing. The camera panned around a room, one I didn't immediately recognize. It looked like a hotel room or maybe a rented cabin, with bland decor and generic furniture. My brow furrowed as I tried to place the setting. And then the camera focused. Lisa was in the frame, but something was off. This wasn't the usual playful, joyful Lisa I was used to seeing on our tapes. She wasn't laughing or smiling for the camera. Instead, she seemed nervous, fidgeting with her hair, glancing off-screen every few seconds. I felt a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach as I watched her. Why was she acting so strangely? Then, a man walked into the frame. It wasn't me. My heart stopped. Who was he? Why was he there with Lisa? I watched in disbelief as the man approached her, and she didn't push him away. Instead, she leaned into him, her body language completely different from how she had ever been with me on camera. There was a familiarity between them, an intimacy that made my blood run cold. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The tape played on, but I couldn't bring myself to watch the rest. My hands were shaking as I ejected it from the player and threw it to the floor. The image of Lisa with that man burned into my mind. This wasn't just a random tape. This was something I was never supposed to see. A secret, hidden away in the attic, waiting to be uncovered. I sat in stunned silence for what felt like hours. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. How long had this been going on? Who was that man? How could Lisa have betrayed me like this? All the memories I had just revisited, all the happy moments we had shared, now felt tainted. Every smile, every laugh, every tender moment between us felt like a lie. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. I couldn't focus, couldn't think straight. All I knew was that everything had changed. The woman I thought I knew, the life I thought we had built together, was now shattered. And I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. As evening fell and the quiet of the house became suffocating, I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. The tape had revealed a dark secret, but I needed answers. And I was going to get them, no matter the cost. The hidden betrayal. The footage started like many of the others. It was clearly an old video, judging by the grainy quality. The camera seemed to be set up in the corner of a room at what looked like a small, intimate gathering. I assumed it was one of the many parties Lisa and I had attended with our friends back in the early days of our marriage. The camera remained still, capturing people moving in and out of the frame. Then I saw her, Lisa. She looked younger, but there was no mistaking her face. She was standing close to a man I didn't immediately recognize. They were laughing, and at first nothing seemed amiss. But as I watched, something started to feel off. They weren't just talking. They were standing far too close, whispering to each other in a way that felt too intimate. Then it happened. The man leaned in, and Lisa didn't pull away. They kissed, deeply, passionately, like lovers. My heart sank into my stomach. I sat frozen, staring at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. This was no casual kiss. It wasn't a mistake. There was too much familiarity between them, too much affection. I watched, horrified, as they continued to kiss, unaware of the camera capturing every second. They then walked out of the frame, laughing softly as they disappeared into what looked like a bedroom. My mind reeled. Who was this man? And when did this happen? I tried to place the timeline, to figure out where I was when this betrayal occurred. How long had Lisa been hiding this from me? The weight of the discovery hit me like a punch to the gut. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, had been unfaithful. And now, her secret was staring me in the face, caught on tape. Confrontation and Fallout. I didn't know what to do at first. I sat in stunned silence, my heart racing, the air thick with disbelief. I wanted to turn the tape off, to pretend I hadn't seen it, but the damage was done. The images were burned into my mind. After sitting there for what felt like an eternity, I decided I needed answers. I had to confront Lisa. She returned later that evening, completely unaware of what I had uncovered. I watched her walk into the house, smiling and greeting me like everything was normal. The sight of her filled me with a mixture of anger and sadness. How could she pretend like nothing had happened? How could she keep this from me? I waited until the kids were asleep before I finally asked her to sit down. I could tell she sensed something was wrong. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I found an old tape in the attic today, I began, my voice steady but laced with anger. A tape of you and someone else? Her face immediately turned pale. She knew. I could see the fear and guilt wash over her as she struggled to find words. What do you mean? She stammered. I mean, I said, holding her gaze. I saw you with another man. Kissing him. Disappearing into a room with him. For a moment, she just sat there, silent, her eyes wide with shock. Then, she broke down. She admitted everything, the affair, the lies, the secrecy. The man was someone from her past, a brief fling that had never truly ended. It had happened early in our marriage, during a rough patch when she had felt distant from me. She claimed it was over, that it hadn't meant anything, that she regretted it every day. But her words felt hollow. The trust was shattered. I couldn't believe anything she said. The woman I had loved, the woman I had shared my life with, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And the worst part? It was all caught on tape, a permanent record of her infidelity. I told her to leave. I couldn't look at her anymore. I didn't know what our future held, but in that moment, I knew one thing. Things would never be the same again. The home movies that once brought me joy had now exposed the darkest secret of my marriage, and there was no going back. As I sat alone in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen, I realized that the life I thought I had was gone. What remained was the bitter truth, captured forever on an old VHS tape.